My gold digger mother-in-law made my husband divorce me with fake photos, then tried to replace me with her secret niece to steal his money but got caught. I never thought I'd be writing this, but here I am. I'm Emma, 28 female, and this is about my husband Robert, 32 male, and how his stepmother Catherine, 55 female, destroyed our marriage with her cruel schemes. I met Robert 6 years ago at a charity event where I was volunteering. I had always been passionate about helping underprivileged children, so I regularly volunteered at these events. His family's foundation was one of the main donors. I was managing the registration desk when he came to check on arrangements. We started talking and just clicked instantly. Robert was different from the other wealthy people I met there. He was humble, caring, and genuinely interested in helping others. He asked for my number and we started dating. His father James, 60 male, was very welcoming when we met. He had remarried Catherine when Robert was 15, after his mother died from cancer. At first, Catherine acted sweet and motherly, but something about her always felt off. She would make these subtle comments about class differences that made me uncomfortable. I was a high school teacher and loved my job. Robert ran his father's business empire and was extremely successful at it. Despite our different backgrounds, we understood each other perfectly. Robert never made me feel less than him because of my middle-class background. We dated for 2 years before he proposed. That's when Catherine's behavior changed completely. She started making snide remarks about my background whenever Robert wasn't around. She would comment on my clothes, suggesting they weren't appropriate for someone dating into their family. Once she even offered to help me learn proper etiquette, implying I wasn't refined enough for their social circle. Despite Catherine's behavior, Robert and I got married in a beautiful ceremony 3 years ago. The first year was perfect. We bought a house, traveled together, and were planning our future. But things started changing when Catherine began visiting more frequently, always making sure to come when Robert was home. She started planting seeds of doubt in Robert's mind. She would tell him how I was spending too much of his money. I wasn't. I still used my own salary for personal expenses. She claimed I was embarrassing them at social events by not following proper etiquette. I was always polite and careful. She even suggested I was too friendly with male colleagues at school. Robert initially defended me, but Catherine was persistent. She would cry about how she was just trying to protect him and his inheritance. She kept reminding him how his mother would have wanted him to be careful with money and relationships. 6 months ago, Robert's father got diagnosed with early-stage cancer. Catherine used this situation to create more drama. She started telling everyone how I wasn't being supportive enough. The truth was, I visited James regularly and even took time off work to help with his appointments. I genuinely cared about James. He had always been kind to me and treated me like a daughter. Catherine used James's illness to spend more time at our house. She would rearrange things and then blame me when items went missing. She started controlling meal plans, claiming James needed special food, which wasn't true according to his doctors. She was slowly taking over our lives. Last month, we hosted our annual family gathering. My parents and brother were there, along with Robert's extended family. Everything seemed normal during appetizers. Catherine was being her usual fake sweet self, but I was used to it by now. Just as dinner was being served, Robert suddenly got up. His face was cold and hard, an expression I had never seen before. He handed me an envelope without saying a word. Inside were divorce papers and several photos of me apparently kissing another man in different locations. I was shocked and confused. These photos were clearly edited. In one of them, I was supposedly at a restaurant I had never visited, wearing a dress I had never owned. I tried to explain this to Robert, but he wouldn't listen. Catherine stood in the corner, poorly hiding her smirk while Robert called my family low-class gold diggers who had raised their daughter to trap rich men. My brother Mark tried to defend us. He owns a small business and has never taken help from anyone. But Robert threatened to use his connections to ruin Mark's business if we fought the divorce. I was devastated but also angry. I knew these photos were fake, but Robert was so convinced. The next day, I hired a private investigator who discovered Catherine had hired someone to create these photos. The PI found the exact stock photos that had been used to create the fake images. I immediately compiled all the evidence, including recordings of Catherine bragging to her friend about getting rid of me, and emails between her and the person who edited the photos. I sent everything to Robert's personal and business email addresses. He never responded. I had no choice but to sign the papers to protect my family. Robert's threats against my brother's business were serious. He had the power to follow through. But I made sure to get a fair settlement through my lawyer. I refused to let them paint me as a gold digger. I moved back with my parents and focused on my career. My colleagues were incredibly supportive when I explained the situation. I threw myself into work and recently got promoted to head teacher. My family helped me through everything while Robert's reputation took a hit in our social circle when people learned how he had treated me and my family. The worst part wasn't losing Robert, it was realizing that he never truly trusted me. After 4 years together, he believed those fake photos without even giving me a chance to explain. He chose to believe his stepmother's lies over his wife's truth. That hurt more than any insult Catherine ever threw at me. I'm still angry and hurt, but I'm also stronger now. I learned that love isn't enough if there isn't trust and respect. I don't know what Catherine's endgame is, but I have a feeling this isn't the end of the story. Update 1. Things have taken an unexpected turn. After my last post, my private investigator found much more dirt on Catherine than we initially expected. What we discovered wasn't just about my situation, it was a pattern of calculated destruction spanning decades. The PI discovered Catherine had done this before, not once but twice. Robert wasn't her first stepson, she had been married twice before, both times to wealthy men with sons from previous marriages. Both marriages ended with the sons losing significant portions of their inheritance through various schemes. In her first marriage to a real estate developer in 1995, she managed to convince him that his son was embezzling money from the company. The son lost his position and inheritance, only for the truth to come out years later when Catherine had already moved on. In her second marriage to a hotel chain owner in 2005, she orchestrated a similar scenario, complete with fake evidence of the son's supposed fraudulent activities. I anonymously sent all this information to James. He was already growing suspicious because Catherine had been pushing him to change his will recently. She wanted him to give her controlling interest in the company instead of leaving it to Robert. She had been using his cancer diagnosis to manipulate him, claiming Robert was too distracted by our divorce to run the company properly. The real shock came 3 days ago when I received a message on Facebook from Sarah, 35F, Catherine's daughter from her first marriage. She had seen my post in a divorce support group where I had shared part of my story. Sarah reached out saying she recognized her mother's tactics immediately. Sarah shared horrifying stories about growing up with Catherine. Her mother had systematically destroyed every significant relationship in Sarah's life using similar tactics, edited photos, fake evidence, and elaborate lies. When Sarah was 16, Catherine broke up her first serious relationship by convincing her boyfriend's family that Sarah was involved in drugs. By age 20, Sarah had enough and cut all contact with her mother. She hadn't spoken to Catherine in 15 years. What Sarah told me next made my blood run cold. Catherine wasn't just after money, she enjoyed the process of destruction itself. She would spend months, sometimes years, planning her schemes. Sarah had documents proving Catherine had started plotting against me even before my wedding to Robert. I spent hours talking with Sarah, and we compiled everything into a detailed file. It included bank statements showing suspicious transfers from both her previous marriages, sworn statements from her ex-stepsons, and documentation of her history of manipulation. Sarah even had old diaries where Catherine had written about her plans. We made copies and sent them to Robert's office, home, and several family members. We also included statements from the graphic designer Catherine had hired to edit my photos. Sarah helped track him down through her mother's old contacts. The designer had saved all their email correspondence. But somehow, Robert never received any of our evidence packages. Either Catherine had someone intercepting his mail and emails, or he was choosing to ignore them. Given what Sarah told me about her mother's thoroughness, I suspect Catherine had someone monitoring all of Robert's communications. Meanwhile, more disturbing news surfaced. Robert announced his engagement to a woman named Claire, who Catherine had apparently introduced him to at a charity gala. They had only been dating for 2 weeks. When Sarah saw Claire's photo, she recognized her immediately, though she wasn't sure from where. Sarah and I started digging deeper into Claire's background. We hired another PI who specialized in financial investigations. He discovered Catherine had been making large monthly transfers to an offshore account for the past year. The account showed regular withdrawals in our city, but we haven't been able to trace the recipient yet. James's cancer has been responding well to treatment, but Catherine has been using his recovery period to isolate him from others. She's been controlling who can visit him, claiming he needs rest. My sources tell me she's been working overtime to convince him to sign over company control before he's fully recovered. I'm worried about Robert, even after everything he did to me. Sarah says this is exactly how her mother operated in her previous marriages: isolate, manipulate, and then destroy. The speed of his engagement to Claire feels like part of a larger scheme. More of Catherine's former victims have started contacting me after Sarah spread the word in their social circles. Each story follows the same pattern: carefully crafted evidence, destroyed relationships, and missing money. The more we uncover, the more it seems like Catherine has been perfecting this scheme for decades. I'm working with Sarah to find a way to get this information to Robert and James that Catherine can't intercept. We know she monitors their phones and email, has access to their homes, and likely has people watching their mail. Sarah suggests we might need to create a public scandal big enough that Catherine can't hide it, but that could backfire badly. For now, I'm documenting everything and working with the PIs to build an airtight case. Sarah believes Catherine will eventually make a mistake. She always does when she gets too confident. We just hope we can expose her before she does more damage to Robert and James. The strangest part is how this situation has given me an unexpected ally in Sarah. We've been meeting regularly to strategize, and I'm grateful for her help in understanding how her mother's mind works. She keeps apologizing for not warning our family sooner about Catherine, but how could she have known where her mother would strike next? I'll update again when we have more concrete evidence or if anything significant happens with Robert's sudden engagement. Update 2. Everything exploded this week. The truth about Catherine finally came to light, and it was even worse than we suspected. It started when James discovered documents showing Catherine had transferred nearly $2 million to offshore accounts over the past year. He found the paperwork accidentally when he was looking for some old family photos in their home office. Catherine had gotten sloppy and left a bank statement in the wrong folder. When James confronted her, Catherine did something unexpected. Instead of denying it, she claimed the transfers were her attempt to protect company assets from Robert. She told James that Robert had been embezzling money, and she was trying to save what she could. She even produced fake documents showing suspicious transactions from Robert's department. But James isn't the foolish old man Catherine thought he was. During his cancer treatment, he had started paying more attention to her behavior. He noticed how she tried to control his communications with others and her constant pushing about changing the will. He had also seen how quickly she turned everyone against me, and it made him think about other incidents over the years. Sarah and I had been building our case during this time. We managed to trace Claire's background, and what we found was shocking. Claire wasn't just some random woman Catherine met at a gala, she was Catherine's niece. They had hidden their connection by having Claire use her father's last name. The monthly transfers from Catherine's offshore account were going to Claire. The plan was elaborate. Since Catherine's attempt to destroy my marriage and gain control hadn't worked as well as she hoped, she had orchestrated this backup plan. Claire was supposed to marry Robert, then gradually take control of his company shares. Catherine had even drafted divorce papers that would give Claire majority control of Robert's assets once they were married. Sarah helped us track the complete money trail. Catherine had been planning this for years, even before my marriage to Robert. The offshore accounts dated back to when she first married James. She had been slowly siphoning money, but it wasn't enough for her. She needed control of the company itself. I was shocked to learn that one reason Catherine wanted me gone was that I had unknowingly started to notice irregularities. My work with the company's charitable foundation had led me to question some donation discrepancies. Catherine realized I might eventually trace these back to her. James finally saw Catherine's true colors and took action. He filed for divorce immediately and reported the financial fraud to the authorities. His lawyers found that Catherine had stolen close to $5 million over the years through various schemes. When the police went to question her, they discovered she had fled the country. The most devastating revelation came from Claire herself. Once she realized Catherine was under investigation, she turned on her aunt to save herself. Claire revealed recordings of Catherine planning everything, from the fake photos of me to the planned theft of company assets. Catherine had promised Claire a percentage of the company once they succeeded in taking control. Robert was completely blindsided by all of this. His perfect stepmother, who he had defended and believed for years, had been systematically destroying his life. The woman he was about to marry was part of an elaborate con. And worst of all, he had thrown away his marriage to me based on Catherine's lies. The authorities managed to freeze Catherine's known accounts, but we suspect she has more hidden away. Interpol is involved now because the fraud crossed international borders. They're treating this as a major case because they believe Catherine might have done this to other families who haven't come forward yet. Sarah is working with the investigators, sharing everything she knows about her mother's past schemes. She's also helping them track down Catherine's other victims to build a stronger case. James is recovering well from his cancer and working to rebuild his relationship with Robert. They're both in shock about how thoroughly Catherine manipulated them, but at least they have each other. I haven't spoken directly with Robert since everything came out. Sarah tells me he's not doing well, he's drinking too much and barely leaving his house. Part of me feels sorry for him, but another part remembers how quickly he turned on me and my family. I'll update again if there are any major developments in tracking down Catherine or if anything significant changes with the situation here. Update 3. Yesterday, I was grading papers at home when my doorbell rang. There stood Robert, looking nothing like the confident man I once knew. His clothes were wrinkled, and he'd lost weight. His eyes had dark circles underneath them. I almost closed the door, but something in his expression made me pause. He explained he had finally seen my email from a year ago. It had gone to his spam folder. He had discovered everything about Catherine's scheme and broken off his engagement to Claire just days before the wedding. Robert broke down as he told me how he'd been struggling since Catherine's arrest 3 months ago. She was finally caught in Mexico, living under a false identity. The authorities found her through her shopping habits. She couldn't resist using her hidden accounts to maintain her luxury lifestyle. During her trial, more victims came forward. Catherine had run similar schemes in 3 other countries. She's now facing multiple fraud charges and looking at significant prison time. The evidence against her is overwhelming, especially with Claire testifying as part of her plea deal. Robert tried apologizing for everything, for believing Catherine over me, for threatening my family, for not checking the photos more carefully. He admitted he'd been in therapy since Catherine's arrest, working through the years of manipulation. He'd realized how she had been controlling him since his teenage years, using his grief over his mother's death to manipulate him. James has recovered fully from cancer and is rebuilding his company. They discovered Catherine had compromised more than just finances. She had been sabotaging business deals and partnerships for years. James and Robert are working together to repair these relationships. Sarah has become one of my closest friends through all this. She's started a support group for victims of manipulation and fraud, helping others recognize and escape similar situations. She's also writing a book about growing up with Catherine and the importance of trusting your instincts when something feels wrong. As for me, I'm thriving. I became principal of my school last year, and I'm dating a wonderful man who teaches history at a nearby college. He knows my whole story and understands why trust is so important to me. When Robert asked if we could try again, I showed him the date on the email I had sent. A whole year had passed since I tried to warn him about Catherine. I told him that even if he had missed the email, he should have trusted me enough to at least investigate the photos before destroying our marriage. I explained that while I forgive him for my own peace of mind, I could never forget how easily he believed the worst about me and my family. His threats against my brother's business, his cruel words at that dinner, those wounds have healed but left permanent scars. Robert understood. Before leaving, he handed me an envelope containing a formal apology to my family and a substantial check for my brother's business as compensation for the stress and damage to his reputation. I accepted the apology but returned the check. We've moved past needing anything from him. Catherine will be sentenced next month. Robert asked if I would attend the sentencing hearing with him and Sarah for moral support. I declined. That chapter of my life is closed, and I'm happier looking forward than back. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if Robert had trusted me instead of Catherine. But those thoughts don't hurt anymore. They're just reminders that sometimes losing what you thought you wanted leads you to what you actually need.